On This Week in Enterprise Tech, this is our year-end episode. Happy holidays to you all. Cheever's going to take us back to WISPAPALOOZA to talk with Bruce Collins from Cambium Networks about point-to-point and point-to-multipoint radios. Now, have you ever wondered what it takes to be a CISO? Well, Curtis is going to walk us through it. You might be actually surprised about the job requirements there. Now, SD-WAN is a thing, and SD-WAN 2.0 is at our heels. Now, Brian, Curtis, and I are going to discuss this and talk about how SD-WAN can actually help your organization scale. It's our 2019 year-end episode. TWiET on the set.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is TWiET.
This is TWiET, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 372, recorded December 20th, 2019. Always trust TWiET. This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by UStudio. UStudio hosts, manages, and distributes private podcasts and videocasts for businesses. Deliver corporate audio and video content securely to any device in a modern, mobile-first experience. Learn more at the letter U, studio.com. And by Brave. Brave is the browser reimagined. Switch now to get unmatched speed and privacy and stop trackers from following you. Save battery life and earn rewards by opting into privacy-respecting ads. Brave is free and easy to switch to. Go to brave.com/twit and switch to Brave today. And by DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean offers the simplest, most developer-friendly cloud platform that scales as you grow. Get started today for free with a free $50 credit at do.co/twit. Welcome to TWiET, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that is dedicated to you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how this world is connected. I'm your host, Lou MARESCA, your guide through this big, giant world of the enterprise, but I definitely can't guide you by myself. We're getting close to the last episode of 2019, so we thought we'd bring back another all-star cast, starting with our very own geek in paradise. He's their director of Advanced Network Computing Laboratory in Honolulu, Mr. Brian Chee. Cheebert, it's always great to have you back, sir. How are you gearing up for the holiday?
I'm gearing up for the holiday with a new tradition. I am recompiling Linux kernels.
Fantastic. Now, it sounds like you're having some other fun, too, as well as 32-bit ARM emulation on a 64-bit Mac. How is that going as well?
Yeah. So there, little did a lot of people know that, okay, so I've got a Mac running VMware Fusion that's running CentOS 7, which is a 64-bit. And then apparently Linux, the GCC compilers have the ability to cross-compile not only to a different architecture, but a different number of bits. So by setting environment variables, I can actually compile for 32-bit ARM in a virtualized 64-bit environment. Makes your head want to explode, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Well, you keep having fun with that. And well, speaking of all-star cast, we also have our favorite security and enterprise journalist, our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin, senior editor at Dark Reading. Curtis, how are you doing down there in the great state of Florida?
Well, we're doing pretty well. Can't really complain. It's the kind of weather that we're famous for around the holidays here in Florida. Highs in the low 70s and lows a little bit below that. But the sun is out. We're all happy, and I'm getting my end-of-year pieces written over at Dark Reading. So lots of goodness happening, but nothing that I'm not happy to take a time out for to be here on TWiET.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, guys, for being here. We have a great show planned. Now, ever wonder how to provide reliable connectivity for everyone everywhere? Cheebert's going to take us back to WISPAPALOOZA to talk with Bruce Collins from Cambium Network about point-to-point and point-to-multipoint radios. Now, also, have you ever wondered what it would take to be a CISO? Well, Curtis is going to walk us through it, and you might be surprised at some of the job requirements that are out there. Now, SD-WAN is a thing. In fact, SD-WAN 2 is pushing the envelope, and we're going to discuss SD-WAN and what it can take and what can it do for your network and your organization. But first, we must start the show like we always do by jumping into the blips. Now, for several years, we've been warning you about the risks of credit card scammers or skimmers and on the gas pumps. Remember? Well, especially since most of them have not been updated to chip and PIN. Well, it seems that there's even a bigger scam going on in the gas stations now. According to Visa, they felt the need to warn gas station owners of several new types of attacks. In fact, more advanced ones than skimmers that circumvent the hacking the pumps directly. Now, this type of hacker is actually targeting the POS or point of sale systems used by the gas station. Now, how are they getting connected to these systems? Well, hackers are using just standard hacking techniques like phishing emails or malware in order to infiltrate the connected systems on the same network or the same system as the POS. Now, once the POS system's attackers program scrapes credit card and debit card information in real time as payments are made at the pumps. Now, you may be wondering if these types of hacks are random or brought on by a well-known group. Well, Visa believes most of the attacks are carried out by Fin8, a group known for hacking businesses in the retail, restaurant, hospitality sectors for financial benefit. Now, ZDNet reported in June that security researchers were seeing an upswing in Fin8-related activity after the group had virtually dormant for over 2 years. Now, according to Visa, Fin8 is also believed to be behind the attack that took place this summer on North American hospitality company. Now, how can gas stations protect themselves? Well, Visa believes it's easy as upgrading the pumps and payment systems to chip and PIN. Now, I don't know, but that doesn't sound like it's going to fix everything. It might be time for Visa and the other credit card companies to chip in and help upgrade retailers and businesses to their bulletproofing technology.
Well, too few companies are segmenting their networks, even though they know it's the right thing to do. Fewer than 1 in 5 companies is currently using network segmentation to slow intruders from moving around its network, mainly due to the difficulty of configuring and maintaining firewall rules, according to a survey conducted by network security provider Illumio. The survey, based on interviews with 300 IT professionals, found that 19% of companies currently use network segmentation, while another 26% are planning a project in the next 6 months. Yet a whopping 55% of companies aren't even considering deploying segmentation. The responses suggest that companies understand the benefits of segmenting their applications and servers, but the difficulty of the project has dissuaded many IT professionals. Among their most pressing concerns were cost, troubleshooting, deployment, and making changes, Illumio stated in the report. Defending the parameter is no longer an effective strategy, the firm states on its Zero Trust site. Zero Trust implements methods to localize and isolate threats through microcore, microsegmentation, and deep visibility to give you an organized approach to identify threats and limit the impact of any breach.
Well, our friends Apple, Google, and Amazon have created Chip, a new smart home standard. So this article from Ars Technica was updated on the 19th of December. There have been a few new developments since yesterday's announcement that Apple, Google, Amazon, and Zigbee have come together to create an initial smart home standard. First, Apple has open-sourced portions of their HomeKit accessory development kit, allowing developers to prototype non-commercial smart home accessories. Commercial devices still need a license. So in a blog post, Apple says it open sourced the HomeKit ADK to accelerate the development of the new universal standard that it is developing with the Chip working group. Chip has been pitched as combining the best from Apple, Amazon, Google, and Zigbee, so presumably bits of this HomeKit ADK will also be used in the Chip standard. I should also fess up that about 18 years ago, the University of Hawaii participated with the MIT Media Lab and also the Stanford Research Institute on a DARPA-funded project called SenseIt. The result was actually a commercial spin-off called Zigbee. Lots of fun. So anyway, the second development is that Google has a second blog post on Chip with some more details. Google talked a bit about security, saying that by leveraging the tried and true internet protocol, cloud services, Chip will enable direct, private, and secure end-to-end communications among devices, mobiles, and cloud services with a familiar and consistent development and programming model, making it easier for developers to leverage their experience and solutions across those domains. This approach reduces points of attack and weaknesses where security would otherwise be terminated and reinitialized. Well, one thing to note is that if you look at the connectivity period, so if we could scroll down just a little bit on that article to the pyramid, if you look at that, IPv4 is missing. It is IPv6 only. So with IPv4's address space either massively expensive or unavailable, it only makes sense since AREN is only giving out IPv4 space to ISPs that justify it with a migration plan for eventual full IPv6 adoption. Anyway, I, for one, hope to see enterprise automation options showing up at their website at connectedhomeip.com.
Now, a lot of us are excited about 5G coming to a tower near us. I know I am. Now, you're probably hearing about all the hype about the lightning-fast speeds and lower power requirements of 5G. However, the greater speeds comes greater security and privacy concerns as well. Now, the question is, even as the industry attempts to improve the defenses on 3 and 4G, is it going to be ready for 5G as well? That's a big question. Now, it's unfortunate, but the news is a bit glib. Now, what 5G does have better is support for anti-tracking and spoofing features. Now, these make it harder for bad actors on a network to track and manipulate individual device connections. Now, it does that by encrypting just more and more data. Now, what 5G also is doing is enabling operators to do what's called network slicing. Now, that's segmenting the system in numerous virtual networks that can be managed and customized separately. Now, this means that different quote-unquote slices could have different tailored protections for specific types of devices. Now, even though all these improvements sound great, security is a moving target, and 5G leaves a good amount of room for improvement still. Now, for instance, there's still ways for users can be tracked outside some of the original techniques. In fact, researchers over the last year have demonstrated numerous ways to track users over 5G using information that remains unencrypted as it's transmitted or that it leaks because of the flaw in the standard. Now, this can allow attacks known as fake base station attacks with devices often called as stingrays that trick targeted devices into thinking they're a cell tower and connect. Now, from there, attackers could intercept mobile traffic to spy on victims and even manipulate data as well. Now, researchers have also pointed out that some flaws in 5G allow for what they call downgrade attacks, in which a targeted phone connection is manipulated to downgrade to 3G or 4G services, where hackers can use unresolved flaws in those service types in older networks to carry out their attacks. Now, since 5G is slow to roll out, pointing out these flaws ahead of time is giving operators time to plug the holes in the gaps. However, 5G is a big step forward on several fronts, but won't provide the warm and fuzzy feeling of all full security upgrade until pure 5G networks come along with no legacy tech, which actually could be 10 or more years from now. Until that time, there's no magic security solution to solve all the problems, so 5G's improvements will have to do for now.
What do President Donald Trump, the word password, and the string 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 have in common? Each and every one is somewhere amongst the ranks of Splash Data's annual Worst Passwords of the Year list. After making an appearance in the 2018 list, Donald fell out of the top 25 most dangerous and commonly leaked passwords, and Password, which has held first or second place in the 9 years Splash Data has been ranking risky passwords, has fallen to fourth place. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, previously ranked number 4, came in 6. So what replaced it in first? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, holding the top spot, followed by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and QWERTY. Now, there were a few consistent passwords on this year's list, among them Princess, I Love You, and Welcome. Now, new entries included 1QT2W3E4R and QWERTY UIOP, which might seem complicated to people who haven't ever really looked at a keyboard, but likely won't trick hackers who can guess simple keyboard patterns. The company evaluated more than 5 million passwords leaked on the internet to come up with this year's list of strings, phrases, and words that you absolutely, positively should not use.
Well, after that, we're going to go talk about crypto keys. iPhones and iPads finally get key-based protection against account takeovers. For the past couple of years, iPhone and iPad users have been relegated to second-class citizenship when it comes to cross-industry protocol that promises to bring effective multi-factor authentication to the masses. While Android, Windows, Mac, and Linux users have had an easy way to use the fledgling standard when logging into Google, GitHub, and dozens of other sites, the process on iPhones and iPads was either painful or non-existent. Apple's reticence wasn't just bad for iPhone and iPad users looking for the most effective way to thwart the growing scourge of account takeovers. The hesitation was bad for everyone else too, with one of the most important computing platforms getting the cold shoulder to web auth, and the fledgling standard had little chance of gaining critical mass. I would, however, like to say that with Apple making noise about finally moving to USB-C in the next generation of devices, yeah, I'm holding my breath too, will this become stillborn because of the rumors? Up to now, my iDevice MFA has to be either Bluetooth, which could be intercepted, or software like the Duo system, which in the past has been a TWiET sponsor. Here's hoping the industry comes to some sort of agreement so that we're not tied to only specific browsers for physical key-based MFA authentication.
Now, we all know that malware and security is a cat and mouse game. It's true because malware continues to evolve and surprise us as all of its reaches. Now, as an iPhone user, actually, I'm an iPhone user as well. I felt a bit more secure than most, but unfortunately, that might have just faded away. According to the Media Trust Digital Security and Operations team, there are some new malware infecting iPhone users as well. In fact, a malicious web redirect campaign is actually affecting iPhone users, and it has impacted more than 100 publisher websites, including the online newspapers and international weekly news magazines as well. Now, iPhone users visiting any of the impacted websites are redirected via a multi-stage process to eventually land on a fraudulent pop-up masquerading as a grocery store reward ad. Now, along the multiple hop redirects, the Krampus 3PC malware proceeds to harvest user session and cookie information from users, giving attackers the ability to log into users' various online accounts. Now, adding insult to injury here, if visitors click on the grocery store ad also, they're also redirected to a phishing page that prompts them to enter their personal information. Now, that wasn't enough here. The malware was able to retrieve not only whatever information users enter, but also their phone numbers as well, which is later on used for phishing texts and cookie IDs. Now, the cookie ID enables the Krampus 3PC to actually hijack the browser, and if the user had other sites like their bank or favorite online retailer open on their device, they can actually gain access to the user's accounts. Now, access to a session cookie could or would enable the hacker to log in as the user at a later time. Now, who are the hackers using Krampus? Well, unfortunately, the attackers are of an unknown origin. In fact, they were able to distribute the infected ads via ad tech stack AdTech. They actually used the provider's platform API to insert rogue code. Now, luckily for now, AdTech has blacklisted the advertiser and the ad itself. But due to the complexity and sophistication behind this attack, it's hard to detect that and prevent it in the future. Now, this means it will eventually pop up once again. Well, if you want to learn something new for this new year, if it teaches us anything, cookies are not so delicious when they're used to store session access. Well, folks, that does it for the blips. Next up, the bites. But before we actually get to the bites, we have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Studio. And I think it's safe to say you're staying informed through shows like This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, if you're actually definitely not alone here, because 44% of Americans turn to podcasts for their news and information. That's right. With those kind of numbers, it's no wonder businesses want to actually leverage this medium for their workforces as well. Well, if you're a business and your business is ready, Studio is your answer. Now, Studio hosts, manages, and distributes private podcasts and videocasts for businesses. It gives your organization a unique and effective way of communicating. Now, it lets you deliver confidential information securely to your people, whether they're employees or part of your remote workforce, customers, or partners. Not only that, but Studio is fully customizable, allowing you to add your company's logo and colors as well. Now, we all use email to communicate. It's true, but sometimes people ignore them or don't always get all the context from them. Well, Studio will show you that audio and video formats are up to 700% more effective than text. To see how easy it is to start impacting your organization, UStudio can be implemented in hours, not months, and provide detailed analytics along the way. And with this data, you can now see who's engaged in what and when and how often. Now, think about all the ways your company could utilize a private podcast or video cast with UStudio. You could share weekly messages from the CEO or management. What about maybe onboarding remote workforces? Now, this is a perfect medium for that process. Plus, it's a creative and effective way to spread company news on product updates or anything else you want to find important. Now, the other great thing about UStudio is the focus on privacy and security as well. In today's climate, all organizations are thinking about that, right? While UStudio ensures your confidential business information is never discoverable online. Not only that, but they can actually quickly authenticate users using SSO or other authentication protocols, actually ensuring authentication gets out of the way to unlock all the available content. Not only that, but you can restrict access by department, seniority, and location. Now, UStudio will make it easy for you to communicate effectively across your organization. In fact, each recording can be downloaded and listened to on demand, so users can actually make the most out of the time that they usually get lost during commuting or traveling. Join companies like Salesforce, Nike, and Dell who just trust UStudio to power their private podcast. Go to ustudio.com today to request your free trial or personalized demo. And be sure to mention you heard about it from This Week in Enterprise Tech. That's the letter U, studio.com. And we thank UStudio for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, let's go ahead and move into the bites. And what better way to actually end this year with another one from Chee. Chee, you're going to talk to us about, through Cambium Networks, about ePMP. Is that correct?
You bet. And first and foremost, I'm going to apologize. The belt pack that I was using for the wireless microphone had a failing cable that had to the lavalier mic. So sadly, there's some blast of static every once in a while that we weren't able to edit out. So just concentrate on the content. So the idea behind ePMP is it's basic and acronym. So enhanced point to multi-point. So if you need to get across the street or down the block or even across town, there are some really interesting new alternatives for you. And Cambium was talking about that. There are others, but the Cambium's interesting in that they've gone to a profile-based system. So once you bring it in, onboard it into the portal system, you can actually do a lot of the management remotely, and it's nearly plug and play even for a point-to-point. And when I was fussing around with it, there's some really nice features on aiming these things. So it's not as hard to do a point-to-point link as it used to be. Anyway, so we have Bruce Collins. He's the product manager for the ePMP product line. And he's going to talk a little bit about what's happening at WISPAPALOOZA.
Hi, this is Brian Chee. I'm at WISPAPALOOZA 2019. We're in the Cambium booth, and I'm talking to Bruce Collins, and we're talking ePMP. So why don't we start off? Just what is ePMP?
Thanks. ePMP is our point-to-multipoint and point-to-point broadband solution that's used by enterprise customers and wireless internet service providers to deliver high-capacity, reliable connections, effectively anywhere from point A to point B in lots of different topologies and technologies.
So, for instance, instead of having to trench and spend a ton of money to get across campus, I could run something like this?
Absolutely. So if I want to connect one building to another, or if I want to connect a handful of video surveillance cameras back to a central point without having to run wires, without having to plan the network out in a lot of immense detail, I can set that up very quickly and deploy it in a very short amount of time with the ePMP product.
But, I keep hearing people say, but wireless is slow. That's not true anymore, is it?
No, we're showing here at the show this week, we're showing the ePMP 3000, which is the third generation of the ePMP platform. This delivers over a gigabit per second. So those concerns about managing video frame rate, lots of capacity, have really gone away with the latest technologies in wireless. So more than a gigabit per second, I can talk to up to 120 different endpoints and nodes. So I can really scale this up quickly. And one of the hallmarks of Cambium products and ePMP in general is our ability to synchronize and scale up those networks. So you can put lots of density, lots of radios in the air, and they all coordinate amongst themselves using synchronization and to make sure that they don't step over or interfere with themselves.
So why don't we address yet another fallacy? a lot of people say, but point-to-point's hard to set up.
So these radios, as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. There's a single connection on here. So I run one cable to that. We offer a number of different antenna options, but you have a lot of flexibility. Think of it as tools in a toolkit. We're showing here at the show, we have a sector antenna that does 90, 120 degrees. So if I wanted to light up a quarter of a pie, I can do that with the ePMP access point. Something that's unique in the industry, this dual horn MIMO antenna we're showing here. We're just introducing it here at the show this week. That actually gives you 60 degrees coverage, but with very tight patterns that eliminate or reduce the amount of interference that could come into play. So that makes it very easy as far as network planning, setting it up. And of course, we have our CN Maestro network management system that is cloud-based or on-premise. So if you want to run it in the cloud, no equipment to manage, or you can have your own server on site running as a virtual appliance. You can do everything from fault management, performance management, understanding the direction of the network is going, and then of course provision new radios by pushing configuration, security parameters out to those networks.
So I kind of look at it like, this is like a toolkit.
As you mentioned, if you put this access point up on a tower and you're going to light up a 90-degree section of endpoints, now I have a lot of choices as far as what endpoints I want to put into play. So we can go anything from a small guy like this, which is great for a short-range video surveillance solution. I could put a radio like this, which is our Force 300 subscriber module, all the way to some different ones. 16, we have a dish. And then one thing to look at is of interest, especially to enterprise customers, is Force 319R. This is a ruggedized. The R is for ruggedized. It has a true IP67 rating, encryption, and security. So if you're selling to a high-end enterprise, a financial institution, a government agency, and you want to provide the best in security and reliability, then the 19R is the solution. Amongst those tools in the toolkit, this would be the right one to pick.
Well, again, apologies for all the static. This is what I get when I don't put a monitor earplug in. Anyway, so Cambium's got some really interesting things. Just in case you're also interested, I'm also playing around with some of the stuff from MikroTik and also Siklu. So if you don't have far to go and you want higher speed, Siklu actually has a new 10 gig solution, which is point-to-point and point-to-multipoint, but the distances are pretty short because they're all at 60 gigahertz. Anyway, we all are playing the security game now. You can't get away with it. So Curt's going to talk about some of these security roles and what happens if you're ever becoming a CISO.
That's right. It's the end of the year, and wrapped up in a shiny bow under the Christmas tree was a promotion to CISO. Now what? So how do you begin? Over at Dark Reading, we had the new CISO at a company called Axonius, who found himself in that position, and after his first month, jotted down some notes that might be of help to others who find themselves in a similar position. Now, he says that with any significant undertaking, it makes sense to start by understanding where the organization is the day you come in. So where are you beginning the work that you're going to do? What's the context for any changes you might make? So what do you want to cover in that first assessment? The risks. What are the concerns that you, your colleagues, your customers have regarding security? Where are the gaps? How will those gaps affect the business? Now, sometimes you need a formal assessment to figure all these things out. Sometimes an informal survey, the old management by walking around, can do wonders. In many cases, what you really need is a combination of the two. Next, expectations. What does the organization expect of the security program or any program that you're managing? What do they expect of you in your role within that program? Now, you need to account for your ideas, of course. You need to get input from your manager, but you also need to get input from your direct reports and your internal customers? How about the situation? What's the environment in which you're going to be operating, both technically and culturally? You also need to have a good handle on the business environment that you're going to be operating in. So those are the big three that you need to get a handle on for your initial assessment. Within that, you can begin looking for some early and relatively easy wins, like mitigate the highest severity risks so that you can start quickly improving your company's security posture. Implement some essential security measures. Those are going to lay a foundation for greater incremental improvement down the road. Address the challenges that are important to your colleagues or customers. By doing this, you'll invoke goodwill and showing the value that you're returning to them. And important, balance the need to work on tactical projects with the requirement for the more formal strategic approach to establishing a full security program. Now, there are a number of control frameworks that can help you combine your experience with the experience of other practitioners, and we'll talk about those in just a moment.
Thanks, Curt. Well, before we get back to Curt's framework messages here, we'll have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that is Brave. Now, the majority of things you do today include surfing the web, right? While your users do it, you do it, your organization does it. Now, there aren't many options out there in browsers that focus on security and privacy. That's why you need to check out Brave. Now, Brave is the next generation web browser built by a team that's focused on privacy, security, and performance. Think about that. Those attributes don't always go together when it comes to browsers. Now, they're actually pioneering a better internet with privacy by default. Now, and Brave gives you control over who has access to your online activity. Now, get really unmatched speed, security, and privacy, including shields that block data-grabbing ads and trackers. In fact, it's super fast. It actually can perform up to 6 times faster than competitors. Now, everyone wants to stop trackers and creepy ads from following you across the web, right? Well, Brave can do it. Brave is unlike any other browsers out there because it gives you unmatched speed, online privacy that blocks trackers, and a better user experience. And guess what? It's free. Now, Brave is easy to use with a super low barrier to get started because they actually import all your assets from all the other browsers, allowing you to switch easily. Plus, it saves you battery and light and reduces data costs as well. Now, why should you pick Brave over other browsers? Well, it's easy to use. Users can switch really easily. It feels like you're using Chrome, but without being tracked. And you can import your bookmarks with one click. All your favorite Chrome extensions are available. Plus, it's available across all your devices from Mac, Windows, Linux, Android, and iOS. Now, if you had any questions that Brave was a unique browser, listen to their rewards program as well. Brave rewards you by having advertisers pay you for your attention. That's right. You get to opt into a Brave ad. And you'll get rewarded by BAT tokens. These are called basic attention tokens. This actually supports content creators and allows you to actually access premium content. Now, you can use these rewards to easily tip your favorite content creators in Brave. Now, their goal is actually to help fix the web, to actually improve privacy and give publishers back their fair share of web revenue. Now, join Brave's mission to fix the internet. Now, another reason why you can trust Brave is because it's co-founded by Brendan Eich and Brian Bondi. Now, Brendan Eich was previously the co-founder of Mozilla Firefox and the creator of JavaScript. Now, if you want to add an additional layer of security to your browsing, it even includes options such as private window with Tor for these seeking even more advanced privacy and security control. Now, listeners of This Week in Enterprise Tech can easily download Brave right now. Go to brave.com/twit and switch to Brave today. That's brave.com/twit. Yesterday was about big tech. Today is about us. And we thank Brave for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Back to you, Curt.
Thanks, Lou. I appreciate it. Now, I mentioned that there are some checklists that the new CISO or new IT executive can use to begin the process of putting together their list of actions. The first one is one called Security 4, that's the number 4, Startups Control Checklist. It's an open source checklist. CISOs compiled it, and it gives a convenient starting point for young companies that aren't sure where to begin, which means that it's also good for young CISOs trying to get their feet under them. This can help make sure that you just don't miss anything critical. The Cybersecurity Defense Matrix is a table that defines a structure for organizing your security capabilities. Matrix helps you capture the measures that you have or need to have across the different functions mentioned in the NIST cybersecurity framework, and that's one we'll talk about in a moment. CIS controls. It's a practical guide cataloging security measures that can defend against common cyber attacks. Now, you can map between the CIS controls and other frameworks by using the audit scripts Critical Security Controls Master Mapping spreadsheet. The NIST cybersecurity framework found in SP 800-53, that's special publication 800-53. This is a comprehensive list that everyone in any sort of management or executive position within security should know. It is voluminous, it's comprehensive, it's designed to be used by government agencies, bureaus, and departments, but many, many private industry organizations have also found it useful. Let me throw another one out there, the MITRE ATT&CK model. Now, this is something that a lot of people see as being only pertinent to the very largest organizations. But within that are ways to define attacks, define threats, and define what your responses should be. And it's worth getting a handle on no matter the size of your organization. Now, your first month as a CISO can and probably should focus on understanding where the organization is and laying the groundwork for a formal security program. But don't spend all your time just planning, strategizing, doing sky work. Use the energy that comes with a new appointment to adjust appropriate processes, begin deploying necessary technologies, and begin making your impact on the position. So I want to ask my co-host, and Lou, I'm going to go to you first because you are not a CISO, but a manager within the industry. How does this list and what it represents strike you? Does the basic order of things make sense to you for anyone really coming into any executive position within the IT industry?
Absolutely. I think that, understanding your risks and assessing those risks, but also really figuring out the state of the organization, what's actually going on, how reliable and how stable is the organization, what things are going right, what things are going wrong, just kind of understanding any part of business once you start, jump into that role is super important. And then, like you said, understanding the risks of things that you're doing, assessing those risks, and then kind of understanding and understanding how you can mitigate those risks going forward is actually super important. So I definitely think the order is great here. And anytime you're doing management, if you think about it, I've stepped in many different organizations that are completely different from each other. And I can tell you that the first, I'd say maybe 3, 4, maybe even sometimes 6 months is determining the state of that organization, what's going right, what's going wrong. Are people happy? Are people not so happy? What is it costing to run the different systems in different parts of the organization? So again, assessing what's going on is a big thing. And I think this is great. I think this actually offers some great tips for people who might even be stepping in this type of role.
Well, Brian, I wanted to ask you, one of the frameworks that I mentioned was the NIST cybersecurity framework. Now, this is huge. But I know that you have had a chance to see this at work both within government organizations and outside. What do you think of the NIST cybersecurity framework and some of the others that I mentioned as places for someone to start if they're entering this new role?
I look at a lot of these things as like, remember how we always, if you have a kid, you always say, why don't kids come with an instruction manual? Well, if you're a facility security manager or an information system security manager in the government, or you're a CISO within the private sector, think of this as that manual. It's a how-to guide. It's not that it's cumbersome, it's that it's comprehensive. So when I started doing a lot of classified work in the private sector, we had a thing called NISPOM Chapter 8. And while a lot of people would moan and groan and get all upset about how much detail it was, I stopped them and said, hey, dude, all this is a manual. It's your choice to adopt or not to adopt, but it is a whole bunch of recommendations that have been worked out to mitigate people breaking into your systems or doing malicious things without at least leaving an audit trail. So I look at it as not being something to avoid. It's something, it's kind of like rules are great. If you know what the rules are, you know how to work in the system. So for new CISOs or ISSMs or FSOs going out into the world, look at it as that user manual that you can take and succeed with.
Very good. Well, Lou, when we were talking about what the new CISO should do, there were things that listed going out and finding out what's going on in the organization. I was curious, do you have a ratio that you think is good between listening and taking action for someone coming into a new position? Do you think that it should be 50-50, more listening than taking action? Where do you come down on that question?
That's interesting. I think that anytime you take on a new position, like you said, we have to kind of know what's going on, how people are feeling, how the organization is running, the health of the organization, the health of and reliable of all the systems and software that we control. I think it's important. I would say it's almost like 80-20 for a good amount of time. Like you spend a good majority of time listening, understanding, seeing how the organization's run, because obviously it was running before you. So the question is, how well was it doing at that point in time? And then, as you kind of gradually start to understand, like I like to call legacy tech that's going on, as that organization is using specific legacy tech, whether it's malware detection, endpoint security, whatever, and they are using that, you need to understand why are they using it, how it's set up, what it's costing, is it doing a good job, that kind of thing, and just kind of understanding all the kind of facets of the business before you move forward. And I think, listening to your leaders that report to you and how they've been running things is super important. So I would say it's probably a good majority of your time that you're going to be sitting back before, you might have opinions. Like obviously everyone's going to have opinions, especially in a CISO position. They come in with previous experience and you almost have to bite your tongue. And you don't want to upset the organization that you're coming into right away because they obviously have been running and they've been working just fine without you. And so the question is, how can you come in, and you don't want to actually disrupt things right away. Disruption comes later once you've seen the state of the organization. So I think that it's a good balance to kind of balance more towards a listening and understanding your organization before you kind of disrupt it.
All right. Well, Lou, I'm going to stay with you for one more question. We have this whole list of suggestions that this new CISO has for his peers. What one piece of advice would you give someone coming into a new executive position in the IT workforce? If you could give them just one nugget of wisdom, what would that be? The first thing I would say is understand the nitty-gritty, the actual breakdown of the current legacy technology. So obviously, like I said, their things are already been running. They have been running in a particular amount of reliability and effectiveness, and understanding what that is and why it is set up that way is super important. Why is the business running like that? How much is it costing to do this type of thing? Does the organization think it's good or bad? And so taking assessment of that is the number one thing I think you need to do when you jump into a role. Because again, coming in and just disrupting everything
is gonna, it's gonna cause, kind of like a snowball effect. You'll see people microaggressions from people. You'll see churn of personnel and staff, and you just don't want that to happen. So I would say the first thing that anytime you jump into any leadership role, especially in the IT world, is understanding the technology stacks and the current state of those stacks. But I would say that that's probably one of the first things I would do, and that would be probably the best thing to do.
Sage advice there. Well, Brian, I'm going to come to you with the same question. If you had one nugget of wisdom to impart based on all of your experience, what would that big nugget be?
Actually, I'm going to elaborate on something that Chumley is saying in the chat room. If it's rusted, don't paint over it. I'm a big one on understanding how the widgets work. If you as a CISO or any IT manager come into a position and you start working with your people and they can't describe what the widgets are doing, you're in trouble. So a new position means everybody stops and takes a breath. This is your golden opportunity to sit down with your people, learn how to work with them, and also go and make sure that those widgets and so forth are cataloged and described. One of the things that I always tell people is that also gives you the golden opportunity to really find the worth of your people. I usually like putting down as job number one for any new manager is to make sure you have a replacement. I call it the Peterbilt syndrome. If you should be hit by a Peterbilt, can someone pick up for you? And this transition time is your golden opportunity to, one, get the worth of your people, two, catalog those widgets, and three, find out where you stand. So this is all part of learn and catalog before you start making changes.
Well, I think learning, listening, cataloging before the changes is a great idea. We'll be talking about this in the future because we always have a new crop of IT leaders coming on board. But for our next bite, I'm going to turn it back to Lou for some more wisdom on a different critical topic for our TWiET listeners.
Thanks, Curt. Yes, when we come back, Jupiter and I are going to take you a little bit through the SD-WAN technology, how it's evolved over time, and how can organizations take advantage of it. But before we get to that, we have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that is DigitalOcean. Now, as a developer, I can tell you the ability to experiment with apps by building them on a truly hosted environment is sometimes hard. In fact, if it were easier to deploy to hosted services, you could actually focus on innovation rather than logistics. Now, DigitalOcean removes that impedance. It gets rid of the complexity of cloud deployments and hosting. They make it easier than ever to deploy applications, code, and store things on the cloud without all the steps in between. I also love the names they give things, starting with DigitalOcean's Droplets, which actually are super scalable virtual machines that you can add storage, security, and monitoring capabilities with just one click of a button. They also have really great one-click deployment model that makes it easy to bootstrap your project. You want specific distribution of Linux, or actually you can actually one-click deploy Ubuntu, CentOS, Debian, Fedora, and more. Now, how about one-click deploy an application stack? Well, add Docker, LAMP, MongoDB, Node.js, MySQL, and more with just one click. Not only is it easy to deploy, it's easy to manage as well. They have VM snapshots. It's actually a super simple way to take and actually manage your snapshots, your VMs. Now, for me, that gives me that peace of mind of that last known good state is always one click away. Plus, team management. It actually unified collaboration helps your teams manage and scale your infrastructure and apps. Need more security for your infrastructure? They actually have one-click firewalls for your droplets and your droplet groups. And guess what? It's free. And don't let that free tag actually fool you, because these things are production-ready firewalls. Now, DigitalOcean is trusted by over 1 million developers. They make it simple to launch in the cloud and scale as you grow, whether you're running on one virtual machine or 10,000. Spin up a virtual machine in just 60 seconds or less, and actually standard general purpose or CPU optimized configurations provide flexibility to build, test, and grow your applications. Now, DigitalOcean has over 2,000 open source tutorials to help you stay up to date on the latest open source software, language, and frameworks. Not only that, but you can modernize your cloud infrastructure fast with DigitalOcean's marketplace. They actually have a diverse catalog of over 100 pre-configured one-click apps like CloudBees, Docker, GitLab, Node.js, Ruby on Rails, LAMP, and more. Now, to meet the demands of the market, DigitalOcean actually follows this great model of predictable pricing. Always know what you're going to pay with monthly caps and flat pricing across all the data centers. No more complexity when it comes to understanding your future bills or paying your current ones. Now, if you're like me, you love to write scripts and manage things, well, DigitalOcean has you covered. As an API, I can tell you that having great APIs, actually using just standard HTTP requests and deploy makes it really easy. And they make it easy by allowing you to deploy and manage thousands of droplets, resources, in just a simple programmatic way. Now, DigitalOcean offers simple, predictable pricing. Always know what you're going to pay with a flat industry rate. And actually, there's a bunch of things that they include at no additional cost. Now, there is a ton of reasons why you should consider DigitalOcean, even some of the extra stuff they don't charge you for. You get 24/7, 365 world-class support. Plus, you can stay informed all the time with their monitoring and alerts. They have 99.99% SLA uptime, and they offer team accounts for easier collab. Plus, they give you lots of control, including full DNS management, and they have geolocatable 12 global data centers. Now, if you ask me, DigitalOcean has you covered. Now, there's no reason why you shouldn't go and try out DigitalOcean right now, especially to support us on TWiET. Go to do.co/TWiET. Even if you think you might have a project in the future, you should go out and try right now. Now, tons of businesses are already using DigitalOcean, including some of the world's fastest growing startups rely on DigitalOcean to remove their infrastructure friction and deliver industry-leading price performance. DigitalOcean is on a mission to simplify cloud computing so developers and their teams can spend more time building software that changes the world. Go to do.co/TWiET today to sign up and receive a free $50 credit. That's do.co/TWiET for a free $50 credit. DigitalOcean, designed for developers, built for businesses. And we thank DigitalOcean for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, we're going to talk a little bit about SD-WAN. Now, I want to bring Chee in as well because he's actually obviously an expert at networking. But I do want to give a quick background because we've heard a lot of guests in the past that talk a lot about new services and solutions coming around SD-WAN. Now, we all know that SD-WAN is software-delivered WANs. However, the question of many of our audience members have had is that what advantage do I get from it? And how will it actually save my organization time and money? Well, let's get started with what we have right now, like the traditional WANs. Now, traditional WANs are essentially just connected. They connect disparate IT sites together. And if you wanted to add redundancy to that, it's actually hard because you actually have a really heterogeneous nature of your current topology. Now, if you use, you can actually use BGP, which is like the normal IP routing, and that actually uses essential routing protocols. Now, you could also leverage MPLS, which is multi-protocol label switching. They actually provide and guarantee SLA. However, customers want to actually lower their WAN costs, and so they started looking to other broadband options like cellular or so on. But the problem with that is when you have a mixture of other broadband options, especially with MPLS, is you add additional complexity and cost to the system as well. Well, MPLS is one of those traditional ways of configuring things. They're usually done by hub and spoke topology, which actually branches communications from the hub or data center, and internet access and cloud is normally centralized through a normal headquarter data center. Now, this allows for better predictability, but it does create a bunch of problems. Now, for instance, sometimes you have to you want to configure so you actually have a security backhaul for your internet traffic to the data center, which actually consumes a bunch of expensive MPLS bandwidth and latency. You might actually have heard of what they call a trombone effect. Well, you're actually routing all the internet traffic through one data center. Now, needless to say, performance tends to suffer more during peak usage times because of this. Now, this is a bottleneck and actually hampers business productivity and efficiency. Plus, MPLS is expensive and it takes a long time to deploy. 60, 90, 100, maybe even 6 months of time. MPLS actually doesn't take into account or address concerns for cloud and mobile access and security management as well. Now, that's where SD-WAN steps in. Now, Chee, I want to bring you in here because SD-WAN is one of those things that it's supposed to kind of almost abstract away the complexity of the network and just kind of add a kind of like a service layer on top of it. That's right?
So, yeah, the bottom line is it's a layer of abstraction. And the idea is, so like for instance, if you are a large corporation or even a medium-sized corporation and you have multiple sites, but you want to be able to have a single broadcast domain or routing domain, a lot of vendors, a lot of ISPs will provide you with a MPLS, which is implemented over an SD-WAN solution, so that it will actually do a layer 2 tunnel through the ISP's cloud and make it appear that the 2, 3, 4, 10 locations all look like they're on the same routing domain. So that's a big advantage. Now, one of the things that a lot of people keep saying is SD-WAN is expensive, and that's because a lot of the SD-WAN implementations are proprietary. At this moment, there really is not any kind of interoperability between them. And one of the reasons why an awful lot of people are looking at using the OpenStack implementations of SD-WANs for a lot of their stuff. So you've got to look at SD-WAN in 2 different lights. One, you're a consumer of an SD-WAN, like for instance, the wireless internet service provider that I'm getting ready to light up. Their MPLS and SD-WAN solution will allow me to start up my first WISP location, and it will give me a layer 2 tunnel to my first tower. Well, as we grow, say for instance, I want another tower across the island in across the mountains, through that ISP SD-WAN, I can have a second tunnel, and I can still use and leverage the same IPv6 and IPv4 address space going back to the colo that I'm buying space in. Now, from a large corporation, well, let's call it Acme WidgetWorks. And Acme WidgetWorks buys bandwidth in several different states all across the United States, and they are buying the bandwidth from, say, a tier 1 ISP like, Big Bits. Big Bits is implemented in MPLS SD-WAN so that they can go and implement tunnels and routes and so forth. So Acme WidgetWorks might only have come to the game late. They only have, say, 4 Class C IPv4 subnets, but they've got some IPv6. Now what they can do is they can work with their ISP and tunnel that or route that across the WAN, so that unlike straight BGP, taking an IPv4 address space and splitting it in half across multiple locations under an SD-WAN, while it isn't easy, it also isn't impossible. So there's some flexibility that an SD-WAN gives you that is unavailable to you in traditional BGP, which is the big reason why large corporations and now starting some medium-sized corporations are looking at SD-WAN for additional flexibility to move data around. And more, because of the way especially the proprietary SD-WAN implementations are being changed, the trombone effect is starting to become less and less, because now instead of having a single say so-called routing node, you can actually distribute the load across multiple data centers, which might be across multiple states. So it's changing. It's not perfect yet. There's no interoperability that I know of, or very little interoperability, but it looks like it might finally start getting people to the standards table, and maybe, just maybe, we'll start seeing some interoperability in the coming years.
Now we're hearing actually a lot about the kind of SD-WAN 2.0. I know a lot of companies are starting to come out with this, and essentially they're supposed to focus more on security. In fact, they have something called VNS, or Virtualized Network Service Platform, which actually extends beyond kind of the normal branches to also connect private data centers, software and services, and public clouds. They also provide what they call end-to-end security using what they call microsegmentation to actually prevent lateral spread of malware and provides application level visibility. Now, they also offer virtual network functions, VNFs, and they're built into the SD-WAN to allow for automated action and microsegmentation capabilities. Now, it sounds like they're adding a lot more stuff that enables things to more streamline the additional devices, and as well as handle voice over IP better, IoT connectivity, and WAN optimization. Again, because they're adding that layer of abstraction to it, where it gives you a little bit more control over things. You can add policies to things, determine when there's too much jitter. If you want to reroute things, you can do that. They have the kind of the easy zero-touch provisioning, which means they can just, send ship a remote office a box, and they can just plug that box in, and boom, they're on the network and they're starting to route, and they kind of part of that layer right away. So it seems like there's a lot of advantages here. I did want to bring Curt back in. Now, Curt, we hear a lot of businesses trying to kind of go from traditional WANs to SD-WANs, and it sounds like a lot of the manufacturers make it sound easy, like for instance, Cisco, Meraki, Riverbed, Citrix, and so on. But you kind of have to buy appliances to support this type of network topology. So is there an initial sticker shock here?
Well, there certainly can be. Now, I will say if you have updated your hardware in the last 2 or 3 years, then the odds are good that you have hardware that you can go to SD-WAN in a software upgrade. You can add the capability, the hardware is there. Older than that, if you're towards the end of, say, a 5-year refresh cycle, or as some companies are with their networking equipment, even a 7-year refresh cycle, your options are more limited. There you are, in fact, looking at a forklift upgrade if you want to do all of this through your routers. Now, it's important to note that some of the aspects of SD-WANs can be done through other appliances. For example, you talk about microsegmentation. I know of a number of companies doing that through some incredibly complex firewall rules. You can do that through the firewalls, but as with all of this, it is complicated. Chee and I have had many conversations around the complexity of something like BGP. BGP can be mighty complicated to get right, and the consequences of getting it wrong can be pretty horrific. SD-WANs are much the same. They are enormously complicated to get right, and while the consequences for getting them wrong might not spread as far as they do for BGP, it's unlikely that you'll take out, say, half the internet, they can be devastating for your organization as you do something clever like, shut down all internet access for everyone in the company until you figure out exactly which bit bucket you've routed everything into.
Thank you, Curt. Well, unfortunately, we're running really low on time. I do want to take a moment just to kind of thank my co-hosts, especially the ones here on today. Chee, Curtis, thank you so much for being here. It's been a great year. I think we had a bunch of great episodes out there, and we're going to definitely see that as part of the best of episodes. Thank you guys so much for being here. Hopefully, you'll have a wonderful holiday. Are you guys doing anything special for the holiday? Curt, what about you?
I am celebrating by staying at home. We did our traveling around Thanksgiving, so it's going to be me here sitting next to the pool, enjoying a little quiet time, just me and the wonderful Carol.
Fantastic. What about you, Chee? Anything special you're doing for the holidays?
Family stuff. We are going to be heading across the island to go and visit with some, I want to call her a Hanai goddaughter. Hanai is just kind of like a adopted extended family type of thing. We saw Elizabeth grow up from when she was in diapers and riding on daddy's shoulders, and now she's had her first child, and the first child is now 1 year old, and we're going to go and celebrate AJ's first birthday this afternoon.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to be traveling to the East Coast to enjoy a little bit of snow and deep weather, but we'll see how that goes. Thank you guys for a great year. Well, folks, you've done it again. You sat through another hour of Best Dang Enterprise podcast in the universe. That's according to 9 out of 10 strung out CISOs. But before we say goodbye, I have to thank everyone who makes this show possible, starting with my co-host. Without them, I wouldn't want to do this show, and they make it so much fun, and they make it easy because they're just a bunch of geeks talking about things that they love. Now, speaking of geeks, I want to thank our very own geek in paradise, Mr. Brian Chee. Cheebert, what are you doing over the next week, and where can folks find you and all of your work?
I am hacking Linux kernels, and if you want to hear my woe and my crying and my sniffles as I get frustrated with it, I'm ADV, Advanced Net Lab on Twitter, or you're welcome to drop me a line at cheebert@twit.tv. Better yet, use TWiET at twit.tv and hit all the hosts. We'd love to hear your show ideas. We'd love to hear your comments. If you're going to go and flame me, do it softly. And since Padre likes to listen in on these things, I'm hoping you're having a very Merry Christmas in wonderful Rome.
Thanks, Cheebert. Now, folks, remember, Cheebert is also our tireless producer here on TWiET as well. He does all the guest bookings, the plannings for the show, and we really couldn't do the show without him. Cheebert, the best place to get to hold of you is the TWiET alias, the TWiET email address there?
Yeah, might as well. That way it hits all the TWiET hosts.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cheebert. Well, folks, I also want to thank my favorite enterprise tech and security journalist, the one and the only Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, what are you doing this next week, and where can the folks find you and all of your work?
Well, just because it's a holiday doesn't mean we're not putting some new articles out at Dark Reading. So I've got at least a couple of good ones coming up over at the edge of Dark Reading, including one that'll be up on Christmas Eve about Santa and the world of zero trust security. So come on over, take a look at that. Would love to know what you think about it. And as always, you can find pointers to my writing on Twitter, KG4GWA, and I'm on Instagram, Curt_Franklin. Take a look at what we're doing. Might find some interesting birds, animals, and other denizens of the swamp stuck up there on Instagram.
Thanks, Curt. Well, folks, we also want to thank you as well. You're the person that drops in each and every week to watch and to listen to our show and to get your enterprise goodness. We want to make it easy for you to listen up and catch up on your enterprise news. So go to our show page right now, twit.tv/TWiET. There you'll find all of our amazing back episodes, plus all the show notes, co-host information, guest information, and the links to the stories that we do during the show. But more importantly, next to those videos, you'll actually get those super helpful download and subscribe links. Support the show by getting your audio version, your video version, or your HD video version of your choice. Listen on any one of your devices, any one of your podcasting apps. Go ahead, and it's really just the best way to stay on top of your enterprise news and IT news. Now, after you subscribe, maybe give the gift of TWiET to your friends, your families, and your coworkers, because you'll definitely impress them with that gift. They could then keep on top of their enterprise and IT news as well. Now, after you subscribe, remember, we do this show live each and every week, 1:30 p.m. Pacific time on Fridays. That's live.twit.tv. Come see how the show's made, all the behind the scenes and everything. Now, if you're going to jump in the show live, also jump into the chat room live as well. That's irc.twit.tv. We have a bunch of great characters out there, and they have really some great discussions, some questions. We actually took some of them during the show today, which was great. So definitely jump into the chat room as well. Now, if you can't be part of the live shows, we know you're busy during your day. You have lots of things to do. You can't be part of the live stuff. So obviously subscribe to the podcast, but also we have a great community website as well. That's twit.community. You can actually go out there, and there's some really great discussions going on, not only of all the guests, and all the co-hosts and hosts are out there, but also a lot of the guests come in there, as well as the TWiT community. They discuss technology. They discuss the kind of each show and the different topics of the show. So definitely go out there and check it out, especially if you're during off-peak hours. Now, also, don't forget, you can follow me, twitter.com/LouMM. There I'll post all my stuff I'm doing over my vacation time, my traveling, all of my beefs with companies that I have out there. As well as if you want to check out what I do at Microsoft, you can go to dev.office.com. There we post the latest and greatest ways we can customize Office and make it more productive for your organization. I do want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to Leo and Lisa. They continue to support us each and every week doing This Week in Enterprise Tech, and we could not do this show without them. Thank you that very much. Also, thank you to all the engineers and all the other staff at TWiET. We really couldn't do the show without you. We've had a great year, and we really appreciate all your support. But before we sign out, we have to thank our TD for today, Victor. We have to maintain tradition, especially before the new year. What is the biggest, now I'm going to ask you a very interesting question here. What is the biggest takeaway from TWiET for the entire year?
Oh, man. I know. I got a really big one from today, from these 2 bytes, from Curt and you and Chee. And I'll probably be emailing you guys on TWiET at twit.tv while I'm making my resume to apply for a new CISO position. So, because with these 2 bytes, I think I can do it.
I would say you're super close, but that would be always trust TWiET.
Well, kind of. That is like, I'm trusting TWiET to make my new resume.
All right, I'll give you. We'll give you that. We'll give you that. Maybe you're really close. Well, folks, thank you so much, and thank you for a great year. And until next time, I'm Lou MARESCA, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep TWiET.